we go, like Robert says, we go from chaos to extreme organization. Yeah, a bit like that. Yeah, it's one minute left. I think one of the best ways to get better at chess is to learn different pawn structures and understand what's going on when these structures are reached. And the Carlsbad is one, the stone wall is one, which is related actually. If you have a Carlsbad pawn structure like this, all black has to do later on is to play this move, and we will get a stone wall structure. And then we have the Isolani, we have the hanging pawns. There are these structures that arise in the Petrov and the French. We've exchanged e-pawns. There are the Maroxy, the hedgehog structures, etc. And every time you understand a structure like that, you become significantly stronger. It's much, I think it's a more valuable, a better way to spend your time if you want to get stronger, if this is important to you, than it is to just learn some theory. And I will start today by talking about the Carlsbad. And hi, Simon. The Carlsbad can come about through many openings, and we're actually going to start with a game to illustrate one of the most important concepts in the Carlsbad. So normally, the Carlsbad system comes about through a queen's gambit, something like this, for instance. This is one standard way of reaching a Carlsbad here and c6. And so it's basically this pawn structure I'm going to talk about. Yeah, Michael, and yeah, the Benoni, yeah, I agree. I learned from the Russian chess school that there are light square structures and there are black square structures. So and that is the definition for the black side. So in this sense, the Carlsbad system is for black a white squares system, because black is trying to control the white squares here. So basically, what black's setup is, and this is the standard for most d4 openings. It was black is trying to stop white from playing e4 under favorable circumstances. So everything, I mean, the two main moves here, d5 and knight f6, of course. Now I'm talking very, very basic stuff. I understand that. But those are one family, sort of, the knight f6, d5 openings with e6. And when we play, I mean, the Nimzo-Indian is also light square bishop, light square opening, because we're still trying to stop white from playing e4. We're still trying to control the light squares. Whereas the Benoni and the King's Indian, they are black squared openings, where black actually gives white the opportunity to put pawns on the white squares, and black just takes control of dark squares. So Carlsbad, black light square structure, trying to control. Sorry about that. So we have this, and some would say that the Carlsbad structure is just the pawns, and some would probably say that the bishop over here is important. I don't think so. I'm going to treat. I've not looked this up. I'm not going to be historically correct or anything here. I'm just trying to make sense of positions that have this or that come from this, because this can turn into many other structures in its turn. So, for instance, if white later on plays e4, and we take here, then we could get another type of structure. And if black plays c5 later on, then we can get Missolani. Or if black plays b6, if we play like this, b6, bishop e2. Of course, you can't do this now. I'm just trying to illustrate how this is a stepping stone for other structures. We can get isolated hanging pawns. Sorry. But if we get to, and we can get through to the Carlsbad through the Caro-Kann. We can get there via these kinds of lines where black plays c5 and e3 and knight c6 and knight f3 and black takes. And it's very similar to the Caro-Kann version also. And so there are lots of ways. So even if you don't play d4 as white, there's still chances for you to get this structure through other openings. And I think it's very important to be able to understand them. Even if at the end of the series, I'm going to show some World Championship games. I mean, in the last World Championship, there were some very significant, important wins where it was the Carlsbad system between Nepomniachtchi and Ding. So, what is here? We have a bit strange start, and eventually everything gets exchanged, and here we are. This is the cleanest version of a Carlsbad structure you can have almost. No minor pieces. White in this game is a player called Peter Holland, and black is Keith Arkell, a grandmaster from Great Britain, who plays very instructively. And yes, this should obviously be drawn if white just knows how to deal with it. But I think there's an important point here, and that is kind of slightly, I mean, a computer will tell you that this is dead even. But if someone has an initiative, it's clearly black here. And it's because black has minority attack. That is, with the help of this pawn and this one, black will eventually be able to push the pawn to b4. And in that situation, white has a choice. Does everyone know here, everyone who is here today, so how many are you? 14 participants. You all know about this plan. That's a question. Yes. So I get a lot of yes. Yes, this is standard. So, but even in this kind of position, white in this game goes very heavily for a draw. He's rated 400 points below his. The player is black here, Keith Arkell, and some players who are black, stronger players, higher rated players, they would panic in this position and play queen d8, try to keep things as many pieces as possible on the board, and probably not do very well. But Keith, although he realizes that this is an equal although he understands that it's an equal position, he also knows that he has the initiative, so he just allows the exchange. And rook e5, and now I'm going to flip the board so that we see it from the black side. And of course, his next move is to start the minority attack. Sorry, so he plays b5. Wanting to continue with a5, b4, and then white will have to leave himself with weakness either here or here, depending on how white reacts. So I was trying to do it like that. So yes, white could play a3, like some of yours, but then black will play a5. And we're still in this situation where And generally, when you're trying to fight for a draw, it's generally good to make exchanges. White could probably play something like King F1, and if B4 here, just take this guy, take this guy, take this guy, and in this position, play. It's already slightly problematic here. Because if we play, maybe Rook E2, we play maybe Rook A2. It's already slightly awkward. Of course, we should draw, but it's slightly awkward. Black has a clear initiative here. In the game, White played F4. And this is already a slight big mistake. If you understand that you're on the back foot here, you should try to make exchanges. And White has a very good option here and that is to just play A4. Because B4, take here, Rook F8, Rook E3 here, and B5. Black gets the D4 pawn, but White's passed pawns on the queen side are more valuable here. So here, for instance, Rook C3. This is at least equal for White. So A4 would be a good choice. It would lead to equality after probably Black will just take here and play A5, B3, Rook F8, something like this. And it's going to be a draw. But White plays F4. This is very standard. If we had queens also on the board, and I mean, we can have a position like this. Let's see here. I have a position here, which is, I'm gonna just move the chat so I get a view of my. Okay. So here we have a very similar one, but not quite the same because the queens are still on the board. And if we play B4 here, now Black shouldn't try to hold because A6, A4, B5 is coming and Black will be defending. So we do this once so that we won't have, if we play F5, for instance, immediately here, if we play F5 here and F4, then after take here, the fact that these two pawns will be left on the board gives White more winning chances. We want to exchange as many as possible. So A6, A4, and maybe something like this. And take, queen D7, and take, here and here. Yeah. And White is academically better, but not really. It's it should be a draw. And even if Black goes first, sort of, it's still going to be equal because Black can play something like this and maybe here, but yeah, it should always be drawish, basically. So I'm going back to this game, Holland versus Arkell. And after F4, White wants to play F5. And we could stop that with G6, but then White just plays G4, and there's no way for us to stop F5 in the long run. We just have to allow more exchanges of pawns. And now Keith plays a very, very nice move with Black here. How to try to play this position for a win? Anyone? So I get someone here saying there is no way you can win. So Black wins this game, and Black has won this kind of game many times. I've won similar games myself, because yeah, and if we continue where we've planned now, just if we play something like a5, then white plays f5, and f5 is just as strong as b4 is at this point, because if we take on f5, d5 falls. And rook ac8, we have idea to open the f file of f takes e6 as c5 with b4. And after g6, white plays g4. And it's still equal whatever black does here, but black should at least pose some problems for white. b4 we could play. We take on b4, and then we can play rook f8 to stop f5, and then play rook fe8. We still play f5. d5 is still hanging. Exactly, we can't stop f5 no matter what, but we don't want to lose the d5 pawn. So Keith plays rook fd8. And again, perhaps a4 is the best move here, but white continues with his plans. He played f5, Keith takes it, rook takes, and then he plays f6. Stopping the route for the rook back to e5. Now it has to go back before it can enter the e file again. And white plays rook e1, king f7. And this is the moment where white has to realize that black's minority attack is basically black's 3 pawns on the queen side are of the same value as white's 4. So white should do something now. Yes, if you should play a4, you should do it before rook e1. But at this moment, white can still play something. For instance, we could play rook e5. And after g6, rook f3, a5, g4. White is doing fine again, because white will have a weakness on the queen side, but black will have a weakness over here. So one weakness for each. Or we could play a3 first and then g4. That's also possible. So we could play a3, a5 first. So that's one way. Or just play g4 to try to play g5. Because it's a rook game, and even if we lose a pawn, now why can't we play a4 here? We could play a4 here, but I think if we play a4 here, we do it under worse circumstances than we did if the rook was still on a1. So just black is probably going to take it. Rook here and something like this, maybe. No, sorry, not that. We're going to play rook here. Now then the d5 pawn falls, so we have to play rook e6. Rook e6. Rook f2 and a5, maybe. Something like this. Here and rook here. Yeah, should be a draw. Still black is pressing slightly. Was it better for white to sack a pawn with rook e2 rather than taking on f5? Yeah, well, both sides has some weakness, but white's pawns are more weak and black's king is more active at this point. So it should be a draw, but still black is pressing. So this is what happened, and white played rook f3. This is a small step in the wrong direction, because it's not really doing something to change the pawn structure to white's advantage with maybe g4, g5, trying to get rid of some pawns. That's how you draw slightly worse rook games. You get rid of the pawns. So black plays a5, a3, and now another very nice move. Black doesn't want to have too many rooks here on the board, so he plays rook e8. It means, for instance, that white plays these things with g4, etc. It doesn't threaten black's king, but most of all, we can now go with the king to d6, and the king on d6 will hold the e-file. White cannot penetrate with only one rook if the king is on d6. And white takes, and this is a clear mistake. So so far, white has played very, very small mistakes, but this is cooperative because these, now we take back, and these 3 pawns, oh, sorry, I do like this. Those red pawns, they are basically as good as these 4 over here. So black is almost a pawn up. Positionally speaking, black is a pawn up. But still not enough to win a rook endgame. There are lots of jokes about this, about rook endgames and pawns. And I remember it was some American grandmaster, maybe it was Larry Christiansen or someone like that, who played, was it? He played one of the famous Soviet grandmasters who used to lose all his endgames to Korchnoi. He had complained, this Soviet grandmaster, that Korchnoi was at least a pawn better in the endgame than him. And Christiansen, I think it was Christiansen, he had lost a pawn endgame or a rook endgame where he was 1 pawn up. So he said that he was basically a king side worse than Korchnoi in the rook endgame. As a joke, of course. So, but king f2 here, and now I think Keith plays a small mistake. So the pawn endgame here is 1 for black. So if white plays rook e3, black can take on e3 and play a4, which freezes white's queen side, and then black can just win with the extra pawn on the king side. So we don't want white to be able to block the king side here. So g5, actually, I think it's a rather grave mistake. What black should do is play rook e4 first, and then king e6, and then maybe f5 or g5, depending on circumstances, because white is in a bit of a pickle here. It has to take very, very slow, because rook e3, we just take an a4, and this is winning for black, because that pawn is not doing anything, can't do anything. So suddenly the minority attack becomes a minority freeze instead. Yeah, Keith played g5, and this weakens the f5 square, and white played here, and then he just went back, which is very weird. I mean, he should play g4 and then king g3 here. And now it's very hard for black to do something on the king side. So now it's like, okay, black's 3 pawns on the queen side, they're of the same value as white's 4. But on the other hand, now the white pawn on g4 is as valuable as the g5 and f6 pawn. So yeah, this should be a draw. But instead, black just went back. h5 was played, g3, rook g8. He's planning on playing f5 and stuff like that. Here, rook e1, rook 8, still one endgame if we take here and go here and play b3. I think, yeah, I think king d7 is still winning. Although this is slightly outside our scope at the moment. But yeah, black can play a4. I think, yeah. So here, king e3. And we can just play f5, I think, yes. After h4, here, and this looks winning for black. And then eventually we play a4. And it's a classical pawn endgame. So let's see here. Instead, white goes away from the e file, plays rook c1, and now comes a4. So all the time, black had this idea to play b4, but a4 is there also as an option at the right moment. Now after rook here, if white plays b3, then just king f5, take, something like this, king e4, rook a5, rook c8, and white's position is falling apart. Because when the c3 pawn, can go here, and we go here. Maybe it was possible to take that rook, but this is even better. When we penetrate with the rook on b2, things are just crumbling. So white stays passive here, and now finally we get this position that black could have gotten earlier if he had played e4, I think. And yeah, exchanging from the side, it's the right thing to do. And eventually white plays b3, and here. And this endgame is rather easily winning, actually. And after this move, white resigned. King has to go down and then a2, and it's an easy win. So I think this game illustrates that although this was always equal, more or less, or it was equal up to, I think, up to this, maybe not this point. Sorry. It was equal up to this point. But white needs to take care here. It's white who has the pressure, and it's very common in chess that you have these positions where the computer says 0.00, but in fact one side has to play a lot of precise moves, whereas the other side has some leeway. It can play maybe has 10 candidate moves that are of equal value, and black is in no danger here whatsoever, whereas white is a bit still equal. But I think it's important to see that black's idea of playing b4 is somewhat more efficient than white's f4 idea, and this is important. So there is a trend in the Carlsbad, and this is one of the reasons why so many strong players also play like this with black, even when they're trying to win a game, is that the structural tendency is maybe slightly to black's favor. Maybe not everyone would agree with that, but I think it's slightly in black's favor in this position. So I'm going to have a look at we're going to look at another one of Keith's. And Ratha writes, they get their opponents overconfident and they blunder. You mean that the opponents blunder? Yes. No, I don't think it's blundering. I think it's so easy to not understand the structure and to misevaluate it, rather. I think it has to do with doing the right evaluation and knowing when you're slightly ahead or you're pressing or where you're slightly worse. Because the traditional, I mean, in the Soviet chess school, they said that if you were better, you had to attack, and if you were worse, you had to defend. That is what Kotov describes in his. I don't know what they're called in English. I read them in Swedish once upon a time, a long time ago. But chess isn't that simple. It has been shown many times that it doesn't boil down to such easy principles. And where were I going? And now I lost my thread. Let's have a look at this game, and I will probably catch my red thread again. Oh, Michael, you're friends with Keith. Yeah, Keith is he's a connoisseur of structures and end games. And I once took a slightly better position against him in the Nimsu Indian in Lime, where after 12 moves, I knew I was better, but I knew that my chance of winning that game was very, very slim, and eventually I lost it. Because when you get, there's some players, when you get their kinds of positions, you just know that you have to play your absolute best just to keep the balance. Keith is like Johnny Hector is for instance a player I have a plus. I have good statistics against him, but there are some positions that when you get into those positions against him, you know that you're in big trouble. And Keith is a bit like that. So so Robert says, I had a friend who played one F4 and Stonewall with white and won with terrible positions until it was about 2,200. Yeah, it's possible. I know some grandmasters who played absolutely terrible positions until they had 2,515 rating, and then they never got higher. If you can do that, but you have to change at one point. You have to start playing sensible chess. Otherwise, there is always a wall you will hit your head on. But tactics will get you far. That is, if you don't make any grave mistakes, you can get away with quite a lot. So this happens through Caro-Kann again, and eventually we get a Carlsbad structure with a lot of pieces exchanged. White again is a low-rated opponent. He's happy with the draw. And Keith is happy to have a position where he can get a minority attack. So White is just trying to throw the knight in on e5, hoping that Black will not be able to take. And now, for instance, if we play Rook a b8, then knight e5, Queen c7, f4, and White has a serious initiative on the king side. So Keith plays a move that is shows that he's understanding the position. He plays Queen c7. Knight e7, as Rafa suggests, is another decent move. And now on knight e5, Black can just take it. And so after something like this, we just take here and here, and knight e7. And we threaten to take on e5, and we threaten to play knight c5 and forfeit bishop to the queen. And that would give Black comfortable equality. So instead, White plays knight e5 and then takes back with rook. And Keith plays g6, giving the king some air. Also telling the bishop on d3 that you're not keeping my king in. I mean, if you play h6, the king is still on there are still the problems of back rank mates. And also now f4, f5 is harder to play for White. So it's a good move. And considering what Black is going to do next, what do you think Black is going to do next? Anyone? So I get knight e8 and king g7, excellent candidate moves. But more, if I'm asking, yeah, b5. So Bob, I asked as if I wanted to move, but what I was thinking was more the idea. So Black wants to play b5, and I think one move that is very good here. Yeah, we can't play b5 immediately, so I'm not asking whether the move. I'm talking about the idea, the plan. So b5 is the plan here. And yes, knight e8, knight e6, b5, maybe rook b8, and then b5. But white should... And knight g4 is also hanging in the air. That is true. And that explains why white plays the move he does in the game. He plays queen d1. Thank you, Michael. You know, I commented this game long time ago, and I had written here, which is a blunder. I've written that a4 is the right move here, and that would be awkward after knight g4, which is clearly winning. Yeah, sometimes when you look for the the woods, you don't see the trees. It goes both ways. So I want to play a4, but there is no time. How did I miss that? Yes, I can miss the most horrible things. Queen d1, and now b5. So that means maybe white should have played a4 earlier. Maybe here even. Maybe a4 is a good move at this point. At least it makes sure that when black plays a6 and b5 later on, we will have more pawns exchanged. Not leaving the a pawns on the board means that the side who's worse yeah, it's going to be easier. Maybe we won't lose more than one pawn at least. So sorry, I'm trying to read comments and doing stuff at the same time. I lost track there a bit. So yeah, knight g4 is a threat. We have to stop that. b5. And now when b5 has been played, we didn't manage to stop it, because if we take on b5 now, then after rook fb8, we can't hold things together properly. No. Sorry, Rafa, are you still talking about, is queen f3 here? Yeah, in this position we can just take on b5 and take on f6 and take on b2. That is a symbol with a huge advantage for black. Yeah, and on queen e2, no, not on queen e2. I think we just play queen b6. Rafa, you h4? When are we talking? After rook takes b2? Yeah, okay, yeah. So you're saying queen f3, bishop takes b5, rook f8, queen f3, take on b5, queen take on f6, take on b2, and you're saying h4 here. Yeah. Yeah, there's more than one way to deal with this. Do I dare to just... I might be able... Yeah, queen d8 will be played. I wonder if I should play queen d8 now, or on the next move. Should I allow the pawn to h5? I think white will be able to stir up enough trouble to hold this to a draw, actually. So perhaps we should just play king g7 here in that case. And I'm guessing, Rafa, that your point was to play c4 then. But it's still good for black after h6. Yeah, it's almost. Okay, so going back, b5, rook e3. I think white should play a3 here. give us a chance to swap the a-pawns. Because if we get exactly the same position as we do in the game, after b4, we can exchange two things, and now we have only one weakness. Eventually, when black takes on c3, white will have one weakness to keep track of, and that's easier than having pawns on the a file left also. Rook e3, and now black can just play b4, because after take here, queen b6 forks the d pawn and the b pawn. And maybe white should play a3 here and allow queen takes d4, but in this structure, we had a similar structure in the other game, but then the rook would go to c3 and penetrate on c7. Here, the central pawns are clearly more valuable than the queenside pawns. Because black can just move the queen and start playing e5, e4, etc., and push white's pieces back. Bishop e1, queen takes b4. We're now on move 19 in this game, and the game ends after move 23. It's here, rook here, and this is not a good move. Why is it not a good move? Kevin, you should set your chat to hosts and panelists, and not everyone. Thank you. No problem. So correct, Kevin, by the way. And Rafa also got it. Yeah. So knight g4 here. And after queen takes g4, rook c1 is mate, and instead white played rook g3, and now queen f4 is the double threat. It threatens on f2, and it threatens rook c1, and white can't defend against both, so white resigned. A very abrupt ending. From the moment that the minority struck home on move 17, white resigned on move 23. That's just 6 moves later. Sorry, Robert, double rook lift with 6 pawns on each side not paying off. So that's true, yeah. This rook lift, they look pretty lost. These two are not really doing a lot of damage on b3 and g3 at the moment. So minority attack, very important. Another thing in the structure, sorry, not that one, is this position. This knight here is the ideal knight. It's the ideal knight in the Stonewall, and it's the ideal knight in the Carlsbad. If you can get a knight there, it's huge. Partly because it controls e4. It controls c4. If white plays b4 and we play a6 and a4, the knight keeps track of the b5 square. And it's actually this knight on f3 looks also good because it could go to here. But black can just play f6 and stop that. So the knight on d6 is stronger here than the knight on f3. And it's actually not possible to, I mean, you could take this knight and Sorry, I'm going to take away a few of these. So, too many arrows at the moment. So if we could get the knight to c3, then again we can try to play b4 and a4. But then black has the idea to play. So I'm going to make a few moves here just to show you the idea. So let's go here, here. There, 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 there. And I'm just going to play this move. So after b4 here, black can play b5. We can still stop things going on there. And eventually we just put the knight on c4. And again, black is significantly better. So this counter plan of placing a knight on c4 is very strong. And it doesn't have to come from the d6 square, but it's the most common route. You can click on the area outside of the chessboard to remove all arrows annotations in the position. Thank you, Robert. Okay. So if I make an arrow now, and I can click outside and there. Yeah, I will look that up till next time. Thank you, Robert. Yeah, so this would be great for black. And this counter plan is very, a lot of the games in the Carlsbad, they are about, is white able to play b5, or is black able to put a knight on c4 and play b5? And it leads to very, very complex struggles. So let's see here. No. Like that. And no. Let's see here. I'm going to find the Kasparov game now, I think. Where is Kasparov? Carlsbad, Kasparov. Where is it? Sorry about that, guys. I just realized that I want to show you this. Can't find it. There it is. It's Kohler, yes, 1989. Thank you. Portish, fight against Kasparov. And yeah, it's a bit weird, this. And this knight on c7, not that great now, but it's pretty close to these two squares. It takes only 2 moves to get one of those, and from those squares it can reach c4. So this is Portish against Kasparov from Carole 1989. Sorry about that. Okay. And g6 here. And according to traditional theory, this exchange of the light square bishop is good for black. And mostly it's thought to be good for black because if the bishop, as long as it's still here, it's in the way of other pieces. It's also in the way from here, and it's in the way from here. So black wants to get rid of it. And there are very few exceptions to that rule, although there are some. I'm going to see that later on. So bishop f5, you could already say that this is a small gain for black to be able to exchange those bishops. Black got rid of one of his passive pieces, and white lost one of the pieces that can potentially help to play e4 or attack black's king later on. Black plays b4, and this is a standard way to get some exchanges in the center. White keeps his pieces. Take here. Bishop d6. More exchanges, please. Portish takes, and what does Kasparov play here? Knight b5. Yes, Jonathan. So Ralph asks, why not knight takes e4 after knight e4? Sorry about that. These positions are very standard. So after take here, this actually wins a piece for a minor piece. Yeah, after take here and take here, it's a fork. Good you ask, bro. So knight b5, yes, this happens, and knight takes d6. And now we have a very similar position to the one I showed you just. And I think 99 out of 100 grandmasters would immediately say that black is slightly better. Jonathan said, I read somewhere that a4 instead of bishop takes d6 is interesting. So here you mean, yeah, I like a4. Yeah, makes sense. Stopping the knight from coming there, and if we take on f4, this actually gives white an outpost on e5. And you could say that white has some kind of minority attack on the queen side. White can also use his f-pawn later on to massage the black king side. And if we play something like queen f6, then g3 and knight e5. So yeah, I think that is a great idea. And taking on d6 here is a mistake. So thank you for that, Jonathan. a4 definitely better. This is playing into black's hands, allowing black to get this structure. And now after a4, a6, white plays e5, knight e5. Kasparov plays rook e8. And rook f1. And the standard thing to play here would be to continue with king g7 and f6. And I'm not sure why Kasparov plays what he does. Maybe he's trying to confuse Portish a bit. It's very possible. He plays queen g5. And I'm not sure what the queen is doing there, because the queen cannot really hurt white on its own. So yeah, not clear what the point is. And h3, I would more consider to play g3 here if I was white, but still not a big mistake. King g7, queen here, black doubles on the e file, and this knight on d6, it just keeps everything under control on the queen side. Even if white could go with a knight to c5, but then the knight will keep track of the b7 pawn. It's such a wonderful knight. Doubling here. White is saying, at least, you have to keep your knight on d6. If you move it, I will play b5. So white is trying to create what we in Sweden would say, it's like two octopi hugging each other. No one can get out of the hug. So it's saying, you can't move your knight to d6. I can't play b5, but you can do it on the king side. But eventually, Kasparov kicks the knight out of play and then plays g5. And when I looked at this position first, I actually thought black was close to winning here. Because there's nothing white can do against queen moves to f7, h5, and h4. And then black has amazing pawn structure, great position. But it's actually hard to push g pawn further, because then f4 becomes a square for white's knight, which means that it's really hard for black to do anything also. So black is better, but it's a bit more cosmetic than it might seem at first sight. It's really hard to make something real out of it. In the game, this was played. I'm just going to move the chat so I can see some more here. White went out of, probably didn't want to be on the bind on the f file. Maybe if black plays knight f5, you don't want knight takes d4 coming. Black plays h5, queen b1, h4, queen c2. Portish correctly assesses that there's nothing black can do at the moment. And yeah, I've looked at this for a while, trying to come up with a plan. And I thought maybe we could try something like king h8 to get out of the g file and then start doubling over here before we do something. So maybe rook e8 here. But then after f3, suddenly white is in time to take control of the e4 square. And now white's position has improved. White can play rook e2 and maybe even e4 later on. Still, black is clearly not worse. I mean, it's black who's pressing. No, white is not winning. But white's position improved a little. So in the game, Kasparov played g4. And white stumbles immediately. Because he's so happy to get the knight to f4, and who wouldn't be that? But you should take on g4 first, and then play knight f4. After, for instance, king takes g4 here, king h2, and knight f4, and we play knight, something like this, and it's really hard to see a way through for black. It's hard to calibrate more pieces towards g2, and b5 is still a possibility at some stage. White can hold this position. Instead, Portish played knight f4, and Kasparov just takes on c2, and what does he do now? It should be pretty obvious. We get another weak, yeah, g3. Sorry about that, Bob. I was a bit too quick. And this seriously, this is the step, the base of White's pawn structure. And when we manage to undermine that pawn, everything else is weak. So, and especially e3. Kasparov just improves his pieces. Oh, and there the knight came to c4. And he picks up a pawn. In the meantime, nothing has really improved in White's position. So, and then he goes back to c4. Opens up the other side. This is now just a matter of technique for someone like Kasparov. So overprotecting e3, pawn comes, and now again he's free to move his other pieces. Knight d1, check. Wasn't possible to go to f3 because of knight d2 check. King here, and rook e2. And another pawn goes. And in the end, it's just too many. Yeah, White resigned at this stage. So I think this knight coming to d6 is very important. And next week, I'm going to talk about some classical plans on both on how to get this knight to the right place, but also alternative plans for black. So today we focused on the minority attack, and we spoke a little about the counterattacks. next time it's more about the counter measures that black has at hand. Maybe if black had 2 pawns less, white would have a chance. In the end position, that's true. But I really like this. Was whoever said that in this position, that a4 is a good move, and that makes a lot of sense to me. And we don't really have time to play knight e8 either. So, yeah, like that one. It's looking good. I think I will have a look at that tonight actually, and maybe next week I will spend a few seconds on this position, because I think it's instructive and very it's astute to play a move like a4 in this position, understanding that keeping the knight away from d6 is more important than the pawn structure on the king side. And yeah, a4 is good. It's really good. I think it's a great move. It stops knight b5, and if black tries to do the other way around, then white gets b5 in. So I think that is all for today. Have a good week, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.